So I just got out of Captain Marvel. Wait a minute. It's not Captain Marvel, is it? I just got out of Shazam. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to get to the criticisms first, because there's not much to really go negative on this thing, so I just want to get them done and out of the way, especially because I'm the infamous fucking DCEU hater. Get that shit out of the way so I can talk about the things I really enjoyed about this film. So, first off, my biggest criticism is that basically any scene that doesn't have Zachary Levi in it drags. This is going to tie into obviously one of the positive things. He is just phenomenal in this, but that first act setup feels, I don't think that could have really tightened it a bit better. I don't know, it felt like every moment that Levy wasn't on screen, it just felt a little too draggy. I don't know, maybe they should have cut down some of the Sylvia stuff. Maybe they could have done the Sylvana. Maybe they could have done some of the Sylvana stuff as an actual reveal and not just showing the bad guy reveal right at the beginning. Could have done something a bit more closer to, you know, the similarities between the two characters. I don't know, maybe that's probably just a little bit too Marvel, forgive the pun. But on the whole, I think the story was really done very well. Okay, let's get back to these criticisms. And yeah, again, one of the biggest problems is that Levy is such a presence in this movie that the movie feels lesser without him in it. And that's not a drag on literally the rest of the cast. The rest of the cast did a really good job, in my opinion. My other major criticism is, to me, Billy Batson should be around about 10 years old. And this kid looks like he's 14 going on 20. He did a good role. He won me over. He's not a bad actor. Part of me just feels like they should have skewed him a little bit younger. I would have actually liked to have seen a bit more of homeless Billy. I'll be honest. However, I think the theme of family and all the stuff that ties into the character, and you can really get an understanding of why they chose to go the way they did. And I think that's really to this movie's credit. You don't sit there wondering, you know, where is this really going all that often. The boardroom scene, that didn't feel that well thought out. And that leads to one of the other biggest problems in this movie is the CGI's kind of shit. And that's sadly starting to become the standard of the Hollywood blockbuster, is just really shit CGI. There's some really bad digital body replacement stuff in this movie. I'm glad like the big action sequence at the end is moved to a nighttime setting. That did help hide a lot of the crimes to when they were trying to do some of this stuff in the daylight. And yeah, that's just a CGI thing. I don't think there's any other way they could have done a lot of these other effects. But the monsters that are used to portray the 7 deadly sins just felt generic. As in, there's no personality to them. Even trying to visually distinguish them beyond just shape. I mean, gluttony is probably the only one that actually kind of feels like, okay, this feels gluttony. The rest just feel like fucking gargoyles. Even if they had a better color code, you know, even if it was just a different skin to each one, just something better to visually make them distinct. If that's really all I can get at, and that's just stuff, I'm not nitpicking, that's just the stuff that took me out of the movie. This is probably the best third act of a DCEU film I've seen. I didn't see Aquaman. I haven't really wanted to see that. I mean, that was the problem with Wonder Woman. It kind of shat the bed in the third act, and Man of Steel, Batman 5, Superman, and Justice League don't have any real act structure and are just kind of crap throughout. This one, the first act is the weakest, which is a bit of a shame. I'm not sure if another script pass might have helped tighten it up a bit, or if it could have been, I don't know, maybe just tighten up a bit in editing. The second act is, if anything, I think the second act it felt like the movie makers were not inspired by the Marvel movie, like the MCU, but it felt like they were more inspired by a lot of late 90s superhero movies. It felt like it had a bit of that 90s kind of idea of the hero behind it. I really started to enjoy that. Like, I'm not going to spoil the finale. I think it's actually quite possibly one of the best superhero finales, even regarding MCUs. I think it's like probably got one of the strongest finales. If anything, the finale itself, MCU wise, I'd probably say, just in regards to kind of, I want to say like heart, was probably Spider-Man Homecoming. Well, it has to be the big showdown. And what I liked about this one is that it wasn't just a matter of we've got to beat the bad guy up. The twist, the funny thing is that got spoiled for me like several months ago, but I actually completely forgot. And this is why I hate fucking spoilers. I only realized that like after the reveal that I got spoiled, I managed to forget the spoiler, and that made it even better than, if I had gone in, oh yeah, now this is the bit that's coming up. So it's going to be interesting to see on a repeat, because I will watch this again. I will definitely watch this again. This is probably the first DCU that I can probably say I'll watch this 2 or 3 times. And I liked Wonder Woman, never really felt like watching it again. But this is a movie I wouldn't mind buying and sitting down and watching again. And the sun is going down. That wasn't an Avengers reference. The sun is literally going down. Yeah, okay, so things are, again, Zachary Levi flat out stole the show. I don't know that much about his career. I know he was a TV guy. This is probably one of the first big blockbuster movie he's ever showcased in. But boy, did they do it right. There's a few of the mannerisms in that I'm not ultimately keen on, but that's because I'm a bitter, angry 40-year-old. But I think it worked. There's things regarding the origin with the wizard that I didn't particularly like in the first act, but I think they paid it off really, really, really well in this one. Some of the inconsistencies actually made it better. And here's my obligatory jab at Man of Steel. Holy crap, we see a superhero saving people's lives in the first movie. Jerk Captain Marvel and his journey to become a hero is genuinely great. It is genuinely a brilliant move. So much Shazam movies. I'm going to probably cut that out. Other big kudos in this movie, as much as I really think he was kind of poorly written, but Mark Strong as Dr. Sylvana, this is the reason why to this day, as much as I hate the Green Lantern movie, I wanted a Sinestro movie with this guy. I think he really, really, really did a great job. And I love the in-joke at the beginning of the film. Okay, I can't think of the freaking character's name. This is going to be spoilery unless if you know the comics. But they set up a villain, a pretty major Captain Marvel villain in the first act of this film. There's this worm thing in a jar in the Rock of Eternity, and when the 7 deadly sins get unleashed, the jar is cracked. And then they pay that off in the first of the credit scenes, because there's 2, which is the mid-roll credits and the end credits. The thing I love the most about this movie is that I think it's probably the actual true postmodern superhero movie in regards to setting up a character and the origins. If you watched my previous video, and yes, I'm going to get around to answering to that comment, I've just been pretty ill. People often like to say that movies like Man of Steel, Batman, Superman, is that it's a postmodern deconstruction of the genre and the heroes. Problem is they really, really do a really bad job of deconstruction. See, so the thing about deconstruction is you don't have to critique it. I mean, critiquing is good, but you should at least make an effort to go into the tropes, the ideas and stuff like this. A great question is, why do we need a hero in this modern day and age? I don't think this movie is trying to be that kind of deconstruction, but that's why I say it's more of a postmodernistic take. It overtly talks about the powers of a hero, literally all the abilities. Freddy being set up as this kind of super fanboy who knows all the tropes to educate Billy, who's been on the run and he's not a fan or anything of the superheroes. Well, it's not necessarily a genre if it's in real life, but so when they're exploring his powers, which leads to some really great humor as well. They're brilliant. It's a deconstruction of the hero as well. It adds into that what it means to be a hero. This movie also does answer that. Being a hero is not necessarily about beating up the bad guy. It's about helping people. It's about saving lives. Anyone can beat some thug up. a hero is the person that either finds the better way, is willing to sacrifice themselves. Those things that you associate with being a hero are demonstrated in this movie. I would love to do a bit more of a deep dive in this at some point. I keep saying that with a lot of DCUs, but I think this movie is the best movie about what it means to be a superhero. God damn, that's so good about that. And I was kind of, I want to say, ready to walk out. I was not satisfied going into the beginning of this film. Again, a lot of that was due to my biases, but this movie won me in a big way. I was just fidgeting in my seat. I think I was just waiting for Zachary Levi to get into this, just judging by those adverts. What I loved about it as well is that those adverts, like, they use a lot of the DCEU, ooh, look, it's the dark cinematography tropes. But this movie doesn't really have that feel. It doesn't have that kind of grim cinematography. You know, the color palette that includes 50 Shades of Black. I kind of want to just get this movie out and talk it over with a bunch of people. I think this is one of those movies that just listening to some dickhead in a car talk about for 20 odd minutes isn't going to be as satisfying as just sitting down with a bunch of people and really just talking a storm up about this. I think it's really that enjoyable. That final act is freaking perfection. But as a moment about halfway through this movie, I actually looked at my phone. I was just kind of like, I'm just kind of getting a bit over this. But then it started to get really engaging, and like even the whole thing of Billy's mom and all the setup and payoffs on that, I really enjoyed that. I thought it was going to be a lot more terrible. It was just the right tonality, and I think that's the biggest thing I can say about this film. They got the tone perfect. The tonality of this movie is brilliant. It's got just the right enough of cheese, and that's a reference, that really helps sell this character, but it's also got the right amount of heart and character. The sad thing is, I don't think this is a movie I could see really going gangbusters. Like, there's nothing to really hype about it in a really sad way. I think that could just be my bias, but it is just a really damn good film. It's got flaws, it's got some issues, but it's not a 9 or a 10 movie for me. It's at least a solid 7.5, 8 if you're twisting my arm. I'm probably coming down off a bit of the high from the final act, which is probably why I'm not scoring it great. But I'm gonna go with 7.5 out of 10. It's a good film. It's a good, solid film. This is not a movie I put in my desert island movies unless I'm desperately wanting to put a DC comic book movie on here. Then I'm not allowed to put Batman and Superman. Ooh, that's a pretty low bar. What else can I talk about? Yeah, I think the kids and all that, they did a really good job. I really don't want to reference the one that made me laugh so hard, which I thought was genius. And it's for those who've seen it, it's the bit immediately after the Rock of Eternity scene towards the final, at the start of the final act, and Eugene's comment. I thought that was genius. I love that so much. I just closed the windows because traffic is starting to get really heavy. It's just turned 6, and so like everyone's trying to go home. Most of my DC comic lore is either like the bits pieces Silver Age, some Bronze Age, but mostly post-Crisis, and particularly Shazam. It was most of the kind of mid-90s, 1997-ish. I didn't read that much. I did read I think it was Jeff Smith, the guy who made Bone. He did a run of, I think it's the Monster Society miniseries, but I haven't read that in so long. It was really good. I was actually kind of hoping this movie would be a bit more like that. So here's the funny thing. When I'm criticizing or reviewing films, I like to consider the entire package. So even if the movie has the worst ending and the best beginning or the best beginning lesson, I call it out. I will admit I would rather have a lackluster setup with a great ending than a great setup with a very lackluster ending. Again, that's why I think Wonder Woman isn't as perfect as people will talk it out to be. It's still a great film, but don't think I could ever watch it again. Whereas I think in many ways Shazam is probably the inferior film. It is a lot more enjoyable to watch, and I think that's probably why I would recommend it more so than Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was a movie I would say it's worth a watch, just to say, wow, that was a really good film. It's great to see an empowered female lead character and all that other stuff. It's not a movie I'd own. Whereas Shazam is a movie, I would gladly buy this. It's probably the first DCEU movie that I'm actually probably going to just go out and buy. And I think enjoyment is a factor people either consider too highly or not enough when it comes to film critique. And let's just kind of a quick critique of critique. There's always people that take out enjoyment in critique, then have to keep it as a pure analytical experience to the film. The problem is that because it is a media that requires some sort of interaction in regards to, you can only put in as much as you can get to a certain degree. And if you're not deliberately not trying to put into that film, you're not trying to enjoy it, then you're not going to enjoy it. As opposed to people, it's like, I had the best time in this movie. It's the best movie ever. It's like, man, that movie was kind of shit. It's good that you enjoy it. I love trash. I love trash films, but I have to measure my enjoyment as well as what the movie's like. And I think a lot of critiques don't do that. It doesn't have to be entertaining. It has to be engaging. If you can't engage with the film, like if it was a horror film and you don't feel suspense or you don't feel the horror, then it's not a good horror film no matter how well it's shot. If it's a comedy that doesn't make you laugh, then, it doesn't matter how many talented actors and actresses you put in there, Ghostbusters. If it doesn't make you laugh, it's just not going to be good. Same with this movie. It's not the best movie ever made, but it's thoroughly entertaining. It's very engaging, and that makes it higher than a movie that, maybe technically more competent, but makes you just sit there bored out of your skull because it's two grumpy men wanting to beat each other up because they're exactly alike. But that's why I think this movie does it so well. It's not the best movie ever made, but it's very engaging. It gets you invested into this character and these characters, and then it pays it off in a really good way and takes you on a really good tale and a really good journey. And these aren't cardboard cutout characters for the most part. There's a lot of complexity to everyone in this movie, especially our protagonist and our antagonist. It's not just a really kind of cookie cutter hero and villain. You've got a villain that clearly comes from a shit family and who's given this promise of escape and power, and it is taken away because he didn't meet a standard by some old man. And you also have this kid who only has one goal in life, and that is to find his parents, and he is forced onto this power. And he's quite definitely not the character the wizard wants, but learns to basically become that character. That's a very powerful thing. You also have this character who is disabled, and he's trying to live vicariously through his friend, and that also puts strain on their relationship, which is also a brilliant way to structure this relationship. You also have this group of ancillary characters who only have a few surface traits, unfortunately, but when they coalesce, it works. That's probably the perfect analogy for this movie. And the sun's about to set, so I better get out of here. See ya.